So I'm here today with my mother, Peg Bradley, and we have our second question in the series that we'll be doing weekly. So, Mom, how many children were in your family, and what do you remember most about growing up with them?
There were there were seven children, six girls and one boy, and growing up together. Um, my oldest sister Mary, she's 10 years older than me when I was growing up, and she was like, I think probably one of them kids that helped my mother with the other kids, and she was very fond of me. My mother said she loved me more than her because I guess I had her. She took care of me whenever she could. Well, of course, my mother was always busy working and cleaning and whatever. And so I would say the memory of her, and then as I got older and I had my own children, she always, then we really wound up living together for a while with her husband and him and her. And it was a big house, and she had the back, I had the front part. And then she took over again. She was very good around the house. She could do so many things, and could help me with my kids because my oldest three were one after the other, and then I had a break for 4 years, and then the fourth one, that was my fourth. It was my Dorothy, and Mary was her godmother because we were living in the house at the time, and she happened to be the godmother of Dorothy. And I was always part time working, and I was the only one that drove in the family. So
Well, wait, what about when you were a kid, like growing up? So Mary was the oldest and she was 10 years older, so she was like a mother figure.
yes,
So did she help you with your homework and
yes,
do things like
things like
that?
that. Yeah, and I think so that part of it I remember her, and I think everybody had chores in my mother's home. She was very meticulous about the house, making your bed, you know.
So why don't we go through everybody's name and who they were because there's some of our cousins and all that don't know exactly and may not remember. So if you go through their names and then
Okay,
we'll talk about what kind of kids they were, what they were like when they were little.
okay.
So it's Mary.
Mary was the oldest, and like I said, she was 10 years older than me. And then my sister Catherine, she was next to her. She was the second. She was the sixth. Peggy, or the second. Maria was the first. Cassie was the second. Larry was the third, and Betty was the fourth. And she had three. Shall I tell you how many children they had?
Well, let's go through their names and then we'll go back and tell how many children
Okay.
they have.
So
So it was Larry, then Betty.
Betty, then me, then Lorraine, who was Rainey, and then Roseanne. So that's the seven. And
So Mary didn't have any children.
Mary never had any children. No, she was the only one that didn't have any children.
She had favorites.
I was her favorite, really.
But then Jerry was her favorite.
But then then as I had so many kids, and then she was living with me, my kids they have really became, I think, like her grandchildren. I was her child, and they were her grandchildren.
Oh, okay.
I said that's how it was for me. That's my memory of it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, and Cassie had 9 kids, so she was always busy. And my mother did a lot. Don't ask me how she did it. She was a miracle worker because she did a lot for both families.
Yeah.
And then after,
so Mary had no children. Then Catherine, she had 9. So and she went by Cassie. So Cassie had 8 girls and 1 boy.
right, she had 8 girls and 1 boy, and then who's next? Larry.
So then Larry.
Larry had 5 children, 4 boys and 1 girl. And then after Larry, it was Betty, and she had 1 boy and 3 girls.
And her boy Tommy was her son.
Tommy was her son, and then she had 3 daughters.
So Missy, Sharon, and
Missy,
Veronica.
Sharon, and Veronica. And
And then you.
Then
so
me. I had.
what are all your children's names? Do you remember?
My children's names? My oldest is Peggy Ann, Margaret Ann. Kathleen is my second oldest. Marie is my third oldest. And then my fourth is Dorothy. And the fifth is, no, wait a minute.
Fifth.
The fourth's Dorothy, and the fifth is Rosemary. And she's called after my sister Roseanne. And then after Rosemary, it was, wait a minute.
Linda.
It was Linda. And then after Linda, It was Delia, and my mother was Delia, so she was named after my mother. Finally, my one girlfriend said to me, "I can't imagine you're not calling it." I said, "My mother didn't like it." She said, "Yeah, but that's a, the point is, you want to have one of your children called after your mother." I said, and I'm very happy I did that because it's a lovely name and it suits her.
So you had all those girls, and then Aunt Rainey had boys.
Rainey had three boys, and like I said, Rainey had three boys. Betty had one boy, three girls. Cassie had nine girls, one boy, or eight girls, one boy. And then it was Mary had no children. So where am I?
So Aunt Rainey had three boys: Joey,
That's
Larry,
Joey, Larry, and Eddie.
and then Aunt Roseanne.
And Aunt Roseanne was my sister, and she had Matthew, and she had Roseanne, Katie, and Jimmy.
Right.
And then,
So that's all your sisters and their kids.
right.
So I think it would be interesting for people to hear what what it was like growing up in South Philadelphia with your brothers and sisters. Like, what kind of schools did you go to? What kind
Well, we went to, we almost all went to Catholic school. Um,
did you live in the same house for
we
all
lived
those
in
years?
the same house. And,
What was that address?
2634 Oakford Street. And that was in South Philly. And it was between Wharton and Federal. So they say it's more, well, I went to Hallahan in Philly, and kids from other areas would say that that's not South Philly. So it became that to me it was South Philly. They used to say, no, that's not South Philly, that's West Philly. But it really wasn't. It was South Philly.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm with my family, okay. And like I said, my sister Mary, and she lived in Florida. When she was living with me, then her and her husband moved to Florida, Tampa. He had a good job there. I don't remember how long she was there because I was having babies and it was a lot of work. And I was only two blocks from my mother. Of course, my mother was always there for me. She lived around the corner from school. For my children, she made lunch every day. Mm-hmm. And so I would say our family was pretty close.
But you were all pretty far spaced out for those days, weren't you? Like each 5 years apart.
My mother's kids were like two between her and Cassie, two between Cassie and Larry, and then I think she had a little break, 3 or 4, and then Betty, and then there was between Betty and I think it was 4, and between Rainey and I was 5. Roseanne, I'm 10 years older than Roseanne, 5 years older than Rainey, the two younger ones of my sisters. Rainey was 5 years younger, 5 years younger, and Roseanne was 10 years younger than me.
So then you were 10 years older than Aunt Roseanne, so did you have to help
10.
When she was little? Did you guys have to help with doing dishes and picking up and making dinner?
Of course. You don't have to tell you. My mother was...
Well, we're telling this for people who don't know.
Well, my mother came from Ireland. She was on a farm in Ireland, and she used to have to take care of the animals and help. Her mother was only 31 when she died, and my mother was the oldest of her siblings. So she came to America, and she couldn't wait. She called she wrote to her Uncle John, who was her mother's brother, and he was in the First World War. That was then when they were trying to bring guys from other countries like Ireland and England and wherever, so they could help with the war in the United States. Mm-hmm. And I was very young at that war, but I do remember.
So you all helped each other, though.
We all helped each other.
And who was, like, out of all those kids, who was the cleanest one? Who was the cleanest person?
Mary did the cleaning, the hard clean,
And who was the least clean? Let's put it that.
I guess I was okay.
You were in the middle.
Yeah, Betty was gonna, she'll do what she was left chores. My mother always, she cleaned offices at night. This was a very hard time for my mother. Mm-hmm. It was, I think, the end of the Depression, but she was just starting to get in her feet, or start like Mary was. She was in the she was, I forgot what they call it, when they get ready for the war for the United States. So that's where she was.
So she was working at
She was
during the
working.
war. Like she
Yeah,
was a teenager then, like probably a late teen
yeah.
or early 20s.
She was like, um, what do they call it?
Like Rosie the Riveter type
Yeah,
person.
yeah. She
Worked in a
worked in the
factory
air.
or
She worked where the factories were making the planes, and I don't know what she did, but that's where she was. Cassie got married very young. Cassie had a lot of babies, so she was pretty busy, and my mother was very helpful to her before she ever was me. And I think at that point, as the kids they got older and the war was over, and my father, he had I think he always had asthma. He was and then he used to work in a coal yard and he really drank too much.
he
But
smoked too. Everybody
and he
smoked.
smoked. Everybody smoked. It was a big thing. Thank God when I was a kid, we all tried it. I got deathly sick. They turned green, so that's the end of that. I wasn't going to do that anymore. Thank God, because I never required to have it, and I'm very grateful for that. And then, so we kind of.
Oh, you were talking about grandma coming from Ireland.
My mother came from Ireland.
But did you have animals at home growing up? Did you have dogs and cats and all that?
No.
Like they have today, like everybody
I wanted
has a dog.
No dog. My mother used to say she had hay fever, so she couldn't have a cat and dog and all that. So she had a bird. I remember she had a bird, and it used to sing all the time, and so that was the extent of her. And but I think too because she had animals in Ireland, and they had to take care of the animals. No free lunch in Ireland.
And dogs in Ireland, her dogs were outside.
My mother used to say they were collies, and she used to say they were working dogs. They tended to the other animals, and she would say animals should never be in the house because that's the way she was raised. They're outside. They love outside. You don't bring them in the house. They're dirty. So.
And you had all those kids. You didn't need any
And we had
animals.
kids, and can you imagine my mother with her beautiful mother, 31 years old, and she died after she had a child. So it was complications. She really didn't know. I think she was too young.
Yeah.
But her Uncle John, she wrote to him, and she used to say, I forgot what she used to tell him. But I think my Uncle John must have felt for her because she had the responsibility. I mean, her father was there. Her father had a business, the sandpit and quarry, plus the farm. So I think she really worked hard. So she wrote to her uncle, which is her mother's brother. And, she would love to come to America. I don't know the whole story because she, he took her, and my other daughter has done it on, what do they call it, Ray?
Ancestry. She's done Ancestry.
My daughter Julia is doing Ancestry. And she was saying, my mother said she used to dance on the ship. She loved coming over on the ship. And Julia said, Mom, Grandma came first class. I said, she didn't. She said, yes, it is. She came first class. And he brought another cousin with her.
So let me just get back because we were just trying to stay on this about yours. So you had all these sisters and one brother. So tell us, we didn't have much experience with Uncle Larry. So tell everybody about your brother Larry.
My brother Larry was really a nice guy. He got married, and I think he was about 20. Because I remember my mother saying he was too young to get married. But he was in love, and he had one boy after the other, and he always wanted a girl because he had six sisters that took care of him. So he wanted a little bit of the same, but he was having boys.
So how was he growing up though? Did he tease you? Was he fun? Did he ignore you?
No, he teased, and he used to get mad because I used to want him to come up to bed so I went to sleep because I was afraid the boogeyman was in the closet. So my mother said, Larry, go up with Peggy just till she goes to sleep. And this is before television. You just check my age. You can see I'm 85 now. So then
this was 75 years ago.
Yeah, 75 years ago. So there was no. We used to get milk delivered by a milkman who came in a horse and wagon, and he put it out on the step, and they'd have these metal things that they'd put the milk in, and we had a milkman, an eggman, Well, then you had different. You know, today they have supermarkets. Then they didn't.
But Larry was the